Hello. Please feel free to pause this video or watch it again so that you can understand all the concepts. Today we're going to go over just a review of all the things that we know about quadratic functions. So first of all, we've talked about vertex form. That's what we did at the very beginning of the chapter. Vertex form is when you have a times parentheses x plus or minus a number and then quantity squared and then plus or minus another constant. Now, the number that you add on the inside of the parentheses or subtract determines whether you go left or right. The number that you add or subtract on the outside of the parentheses, that determines whether you go up or down. And the a value in front of the parentheses, that tells you whether the parabola will be opening up, down, and be wide or narrow. Next, we have a parabola in standard form. This is just another version of writing the same equation. When we talk about standard form, the a is the same. If it's positive, it opens up, and if it's negative, it opens down. If it's bigger than 1, it's narrow, and if it's smaller than 1, it's wide. The y-intercept is 0, c, the last number listed there without an x on it. The formula for the axis of symmetry is x equals negative b over 2a. To find the vertex, you plug in x to the function and then find y, once you know the x from the axis of symmetry. Finally, to find the x-intercepts, those are the places where the parabola touches the x-axis, you solve for x squared and then take the square root. But that's only if you have an x squared in the equation. You're going to factor using the box if there's an x squared and an x in the equation. So you have to first look at the equation and decide whether you can just solve it straight up or if you have to factor. So let's try all of these things with an example. And our example is going to be x squared minus 2x minus 8. Now this was on one of your investigations, and we're going to go through working with it. Now, first of all, we would say that this is in standard form. So I'm going to need to find the, decide whether it's going to open up or down, left or right, or sorry, open up or down, and then my y-intercept. So the number in front of the x squared is a 1, if it's not written. And so because it's 1, then it's going to be positive 1, and that means it's going to open up. And it's going to be your average size parabola because it's just 1. We don't know whether it's going to be wide or narrow because all those are dependent on whether it's bigger than 1 or smaller than 1. Next, we can say that our y-intercept, well, the y-intercept is determined by the last number, which is negative 8. So our y-intercept is going to be at 0 for x, negative 8 for y. Then we can find our axis of symmetry. Our axis of symmetry is x equals negative b over 2a. In this case, our b value is the number in the middle, it's negative 2. So I have negative 2, negative b, and the b is negative 2, over 2a, and the a is 1. So 2 times 1. Negative 2 is positive 2. 2 times 1 is 2. So our axis of symmetry is at 2 over 2, which is 1. Finally, we have our vertex. The vertex is just a point, xy, and that's the lowest point or the highest point of the parabola. In this case, because it's opening down or opening up, it's going to be the lowest point of the parabola. That's called a minimum. Now, the vertex, the x value from the vertex comes from the x value in the axis of symmetry. So we would say that the vertex is 1 comma something. Now that something is determined by using your calculator, and in your calculator, you're going to type y equals x squared minus 2x minus 8. And then press the trace button and type in 1 for x. You will find that when you type in 1 for x and then press enter, your cursor goes to negative 9 for y. That tells you that the vertex is at negative 9. Finally, we need to find the x-intercepts. So we have our opening up, we have our y-intercept, we have our vertex, and we need to find the x-intercepts. In order to find the x-intercepts, we're going to have to factor. because it doesn't just have an x squared. It has an x squared and an x in the problem. You can't solve for x unless you factor if you have x squared and x. So I'm going to draw the box. I'm going to put x squared in the first box and negative 8 in the second box. Then we multiply them. X squared times negative 8 is negative 8x squared. I'm finding two numbers that multiply to give me negative 8x squared, but add to give me the middle term, which is negative 2. And in this case, I would say that it's going to be negative 4 and positive 2. Because negative 4 and positive 2 adds to give you negative 2, but multiplies to give you negative 8. So negative 4 with an x and a positive 2 with an x. Then we can factor. Looking at what goes into both negative 4x and negative 8, that's going to be a negative 4. Here, x squared and 2x, that's x. Going up, x squared and negative 4x, that's x. And the greatest common factor between 2x and negative 8 is 2. You can check to make sure your box works, but in this case it does. And so we take our two factors and set them equal to 0. X minus 4 equals 0, and x plus 2 equals 0. Add 4. X equals 4 minus 2. X equals negative 2. So, now that we have all this information, what it does is it gives us the ability to draw a very accurate graph of this parabola. So if I was going to go to my axes, okay, so what we can do is we can find our y-intercept. We see that our y-intercept is at 0, negative 8, so I go for 0, negative 8. That's down here. It's kind of down, so I apologize about that. We know that our vertex is at 1, negative 9, so I go over 1 on the x and down negative 9 on the y. And then our x-intercepts are at 4, negative 2, so here's negative 2, and here's positive 4. And we know that given the a value is positive 1, it's going to be opening up. So I'm going to connect these dots with a U shape. Okay? And now I have a parabola that's very accurate according to this equation. So please feel free to watch this video again. It is a review of all the things that we've learned so far in Chapter 10. Thank you.